Wow. Tony, hey, what's up, brother?
How you doing, David?
Doing really good, man. I'm really excited about this conversation. It's kind of weird for me because usually it's you interviewing me.
Right, exactly. But you know what? I'm glad we're making this happen. Like I told you the other day over the phone, I like having an intelligent conversation.
Well, I take that as a compliment.
Yes,
You
sir.
know, it's I just started, kind of, I don't like calling them interviews, first of all, because I like calling them conversations, because the first time I call it an interview, and Sharon said I talk too much. So I get away with it by saying, well, it's not an interview, it's a conversation.
Right. Yeah, that's the best way to do it right there. You know what? Even me, when I interview people, I pretty much just tell them, do not look at it as an interview because I don't want to get them nervous.
Yeah.
Just there's a conversation and we're just talking about whatever.
Yeah. So, and but well, first of all, for those that don't know who you are, um, who are you? Who's Tony A?
Well, um, that's a big question that I don't have a small answer for, but I will say that I'm from the city of Wilmington. When my family first came here from Mexico, they lived in Compton. And from Compton, when I was 9 years old, we moved to the city of Wilmington, where I grew up here. I went to school here, elementary, middle school, and high school. And I've been here pretty much ever since. I started off as a DJ as a young boy, around 12 years old, maybe even 11. I know the first time I ever went to a nightclub, I was 11 years old.
11.
Yes, 11 years old. And I had no business in there, but hey, I had earned it. My brother was DJing, so he took me. I became a DJ in 1987. I started doing mixtapes, which featured, people like NWA, Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, Eazy-E, JJ Fad, Tone Loc, Young MC, pretty much all the greats,
Yeah.
DJ High C. From there, we were signed to Disney for 7 years. In 1990, our album came out in 1991. I was pretty much in a position forced to be a producer. I didn't mind it, but it was new to me because I was never a producer before. After that, I began to travel to speed things up a little bit. Started working. I left the music industry around 2002. I got a job. I worked for about 15 years, local 572 Teamsters. Became a Teamster, worked for about 15 years. I left work because I started doing a documentary. Then I started podcasting just to promote the documentary.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I'm still here.
So. Yeah. So, what's crazy is I remember there was a song that came out. I'm Your Puppet. What year was that?
We produced it. It came out in 1991. The single came out in early 1991. I could even say maybe late 1990.
I'm Not Your Puppet. I mean,
yeah. Yes.
I'm not.
What a lot of people don't know is that song was originally on a mixtape first. We had no idea we were ever going to get a record deal.
Yeah.
We just produced it for a mixtape to sell it to Swamp Beat. That's pretty much.
What's crazy is I remember hearing that song. I mean, I was 19 years old, and that's all we were bumping, man. And I don't know about anywhere else around the world, but here in the Valley, here in growing up in Tracy, everyone was bumping that song. And I remember hearing the song first before I actually saw the album cover, and I see this Mexican dude on there, which was you know what I mean? And believe it or not, that was a huge encouragement because I was just starting my music career, and to see someone that looked like me on a major album cover and getting full rotation all over the radio, you were an inspiration to me, man. I just want you to know that. I don't think I've ever shared that with you.
No, you didn't. But it's humbling to hear because, again, I started what you just said right now. I started to experience that when we took the stage. A lot of people won't like what I'm about to say, but I don't really care what people think or what people have to say. The majority of our money when we started traveling and some of our best shows was when we were up north. Now, really? A lot of people may say, well, you know what, that's Norteño territory.
Yeah.
I don't care. You know, honestly, I didn't care. We were up there. We were performing. I was DJing. High C was rapping. We had so much love. But I'll tell you what. One day I was setting up my turntables. I was up on stage. We were getting ready to go on. Kid Frost had just exited the stage. I go on and set up my turntables, and the crowd was packed. You know, I mean, it was maybe 300 to 400 people in there. And I remember a group of girls were flagging me down. They were right in the front.
Yeah.
They kept saying, "Hey, hey, hey," and I wasn't trying to pay attention. I was just trying to plug in my turntables.
Yeah.
So I finally said, "What's up?" And then they said, "Are you Chicano?" And I said, "Yeah." And then they said, "All right." And that was the first time that I realized that our people wanted to see our people up there.
Yeah. You know, it's weird because I was at 19 years old, I was just fully blown Norteño, young guy, just like everybody else up here. But I didn't think of it like that when I saw you on that album cover. And I actually saw you in person a little bit after that. So my music career was just starting out. And in 93, I started the Darkroom label with 2 other friends, right? So by that time I was 21. So that's 2 years later after your single. I mean, after the album came out, right? Is that when the full High C album, when did that release?
The full album actually dropped December, I want to say 20th, if I'm correct, 1991. So this December, it'll be 30 years since it's been out.
Wow. Okay, so 2 years later, I released our first Darkroom Familia album. It was called From the Body with Love.
Yes.
And a mutual friend, John Barunda, somehow got a hold of it. And he called me up. It was just local. We just went to the local from Sacramento all the way down to Merced and San Francisco, just like a little triangle.
Yes.
And somehow he got a hold of it and got a hold of me and wanted to meet with me in Southern California. So anyways, we were down there for some business, trying to get this label jump started. And obviously we're tourists. I wasn't used to going to Los Angeles at all. I think I'd only been to LA one time before this time, I'm telling you. And of course, tourists, we want to go see the Hollywood star, you know, the Hall of Fame, whatever it's called, on the sidewalk.
Yes.
And there was a lot of stuff going on, people around, tourists around. And there was a radio station there that, I don't know if it was The Beat or 106, I don't know who it was, but I remember we're like, hey, they play rap music. Maybe we'll give them a tape, just young people had no idea, nothing about marketing or anything. And we go there and I saw you. You were wearing a leather jacket and I think a baseball hat.
Yes, I remember that day. I was being interviewed by Frank Lozano from Power 106. But from what I hear now, because Frank Lozano was a big time DJ at Power 106, we follow each other on Facebook. But if I'm correct, I believe either he's a missionary, evangelist, or just a Christian.
Amen. Wow. Yeah. So that's crazy, man, that now we're sitting here. We're friends. I mean, I don't know if people know this, but we talk very often. You're a dear close friend to me. I'm guessing it's the same way back,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's just a trip, I mean, it's a trip. Like, part of me held back going to meet you because you were from LA. It's weird because I had this respect because I'm like, hey, that's Tony A. Oh man, I can't go up to him. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a weird, and I wish I would have.
Right.
But who knows? I don't know. Maybe we would have made a platinum album.
Yeah, we never know.
Never know. But it is what it is, and I'm blessed for the way life turned out for me, even though there was some hardship in there. It makes who we are, and here we are though as 2 older men now.
Yes.
And dear friends,
Yes.
So anyways, man, let's lead up to, this is what was interesting for me, that the first time I went down to your show is that I think, was I the first one from up north to go down there?
Absolutely, yes. And it's funny because somebody, I was new to this podcasting deal, I really didn't know what I was doing. Sometimes I make jokes because if you look at my first couple of interviews, it looks like I was interrogating people. you know, by the way I spoke, because, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't go to speech classes. I didn't go to
Yeah.
podcasting classes. And we just turned it on. I thought I was only going to be there for possibly maybe, a, a couple of months, meaning here, for a couple of months. And then I was just going to log off. I was just doing this just to promote the documentary.
Yeah.
But it took a life on its own. And I just figured, you know what, let me keep pushing. Let me shine light on our people. I realized that stations out here like KD 92.3 The Beat, when it used to exist, and Part 106, never gave, at least in my opinion, Raza a long enough opportunity. There were times that they had pocos pero locos, meaning there was a radio station of like for an hour or two.
I remember that.
All they would do was just play Raza, but they put us in a box where if you wanted to listen to it, you had to tune in at this certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. But yes, you were the first to come from up north, and there was a guy that kept commenting on the comments like, get Sir Dyno, get Sir Dyno, get Sir Dyno. Okay, I had heard of you, but I will be 100%. I didn't know much of your music. Had I heard it before? Yes, but I didn't know much. So this guy literally continued, get Sir Dyno, every week. Every time I would put the flyer in the community on YouTube, there's a little part where a little place you could promote stuff. So I finally just said, hey, you know what? Contact him. He goes, I don't know him. And I go, I don't know him either. So he said, hey, he responded, we're friends on Facebook, and here's his email. And I reached out, and the rest is history.
Wow. That's a trip, man. I mean, I had a lot of fun. I didn't know what to expect myself. I don't go to Southern California too much. If I do go, it's to meet up with Sharon's family. Her two older kids still live down there. Her parents are down there, and her sisters. And so anyways, I didn't know what to expect. I'd never been to Wilmington. The closest I've ever been to Wilmington is I did most of my prison term in Terminal Island, which is not far from you, huh?
No, not at all. That's in Long Beach. The city next door to my left is San Pedro.
Yeah. So, but other than that, it was just a trip, man. And I was very honored to go on your show, and we've gotten a lot of views on it, and I love the fact, man, that, which leads me into what I really want to talk about is how you gave me free reign to talk about the Lord, to talk about Jesus, and I really appreciated that, because as you know, I pastor a church, as you know, and I'm just like, man, I don't mind talking about, because I know the listeners, most of your listeners at that time wanted to hear Sir Dyno, wanted to hear about Darkroom, wanted to hear, and I don't mind talking about that stuff at all. Matter of fact, I use that as bait, to lead people to where I'm at now, but you gave me open reign, and I appreciated that. But you surprised me, brother. You surprised me, because in the middle of that conversation, you started busting out some biblical facts. And we are a Christian channel here. There's a lot of believers. I know a lot of non-believers are going to watch it too, because a lot of people, they follow your podcast, is it called the podcast?
Yes.
Yeah, or video. I don't know. So anyways, I just wanted to go a little further, because it's like, this is a Christian channel. I want to go a little further into that. I wanted to know some questions I have, and maybe some other people have, is where did you learn this stuff? Did you grow up in a Christian church, or what happened there?
Not far from it. Actually, my mom gave me the nickname El Diablo, because
which means the devil.
Yes, because I was very, very bad growing up as a kid. So every year for about 3 years straight, she dressed me up like the devil for Halloween.
No way.
Because she said that was me. But I love my mother. She's no longer here.
Yeah.
But let me say this: I grew up in a Catholic home. We didn't really go to church. I mean, we were like those see me Catholics. See me Catholic is you only see me during Christmas time. You only see me during Easter. That's about the only time you're going to see me at the Catholic Church. I will say this, that I used to tick my mom off a lot, because even as a young kid, I would ask all of these questions, why the statues? I remember one time I even asked her, because she would stand in front of this big giant cross that had, supposedly Jesus on there. And she was crying. And I still remember to this day looking at her crying. I'm standing on the side of her.
Yeah.
And then I just asked her, where does Jesus live? Where is he at? She said, he's in heaven. And I said, well, why do they still have him on the cross? That's what I said.
Yeah.
And she just said, well, you know what? Later on, we'll explain it to you, etc. Then she goes and kneels down behind or in front of the Virgin Mary statue.
Yeah.
Then she grabs some water and sprinkles it and does the crucifix. I had all of these questions. Like I even asked, why can't priests get married? And my mom, I think she was like a lot of Catholics. She just loved Catholicism and didn't really know anything about her beliefs, what she believed in. So one day, as a youngster, she took me to a Catholic Bible study at the church. And I was the only one asking questions. And finally, this priest told me that all your questions will be answered eventually. So we sat there for about an hour and he didn't answer not one. So my mom was actually very disappointed that my questions were never answered.
Yeah.
And so from that point on, I, believe it or not, growing up, I mocked the Catholic Church. I talked about the Pope. I talked about, and I did it out of ignorance, even though I wanted to know, but I did it more out of rebellion because I really wanted to know as a young kid. And I will say this, before I was ever a DJ, before I ever got into music, I used to draw a lot. I believe I was a great artist.
Yeah.
And one thing that I used to draw a lot, I used to draw Jesus on the cross a lot when I was a kid.
Wow.
Elementary. And one of my teachers actually saw me draw, so he had me draw murals, and I started drawing murals for the elementary school. But I guess my journey began as a young kid asking questions, but I was not raised in a Catholic home. As a matter of fact, the only Bible we had was like this big old 2-story Bible that's, with the Jesus hologram picture in the front.
Yeah, the family Bible.
Yes. It sat on top of the TV, opened, and I would always ask my mom, why opened? She said, for good luck.
Yeah.
She didn't know.
Yeah, she didn't know.
Yeah. So no, I was not raised Christian at all. As a matter of fact, my dad would talk bad about Christians. In Mexico, I guess they call them los aleluyas.
Yeah.
And
like holy rollers.
Yes. So my dad one day told me that the Christian church, and these are his words, the Christian church is for the white man, and for the Latinos, it's the Catholic Church. So we need to stay in our religion. That's what he said. I remember one day, the Pope came out here to LA when we were, I guess, in the 80s or something like that. And he touched this one guy, the Pope reached over and touched this one guy, and the guy started crying or whatever, hysterical. And he had said it felt like God had touched me. That's what he said. And I turned around and looked at my dad and my mom, and I said, do you guys believe that? And then they got mad at me because I continued to question, I guess their beliefs.
Yeah. So,
I didn't once again grow up being educated as far as the Bible is concerned. I did it out far from it.
So you had a lot of questions, rightfully so. I mean, when something doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense,
Right.
And so then was it out of curiosity that you have learned the things you have learned, or was it a search for some spiritual truths that you needed in your life, or was it more intellectual answers you were looking for?
Honestly, David, to be 100% honest with you, I wasn't searching. I just figured, I would hear people say, well, I don't go to church, but I have a relationship with God.
Yeah.
I use that. I didn't start looking. It wasn't until one day I met this individual taking out the trash. And here, at least in my neighborhood, behind every home, there's an alley. That's what separates homes, an alley. So as I'm coming out, taking out my trash, this gentleman's taking out his trash. And I noticed that he had books he was placing on the floor. And I was maybe 22 or 21, but it was right before I had actually signed my record deal.
Wow.
And I saw him taking out books, and like there was a lot of books, and they were like really nicely stacked, brand new books. So as he went back inside, I guess to his yard to go get some more, I picked up one, and it said the history of Egypt. And I don't know why, David, but I've always been intrigued with Egyptology.
Yeah.
Whether it's the hieroglyphics, the cartouche, just the culture.
Yeah.
And I've studied it. I did my homework on it. Watched a lot of documentaries on Egypt. The only thing I just need to go now. I could have went several times, but there were personal reasons why I couldn't make it.
Yeah.
But so I read that book. Well, let me back up. My apologies. I heard this gentleman coming back, so I threw the book. He saw it on the floor, and he said, "Did you grab that?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, it wasn't there." And I said, "Well, I just looked at it." So he picked it up. He said, "The history of Egypt." He goes, "Hey, take it home and read it." And I said, "I don't know if I can bring it back. When I could bring it back." He said, "Just read it. And when you're done," he said, "come back and give it to me." I said, "Okay, no problem."
Yeah.
I read it. I would say it took me about a month to read. I brought it back to him. And to speed things along, he gave me another book. And this one was History of Assyria.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I read that one. That one I probably read within 3 weeks. I guess I never realized that I can actually read, meaning like that these writings were so intriguing to me that I was knocking them out like faster. The first one was about a month. The next one was about 3 weeks. I took it back, and then the next one was Babylon, the history of Babylon, and which is Iraq. And
Yeah.
I read that one, and then the next one was the history of Persia, which is Iran, and then the next one was Greece, and then the next one was Rome, and then the next one was the history of ancient Israel. And I was just so fascinated. So when I took all these books back, he invited me into his house finally. And he shows me around, and I look at all of these plaques that he has on the wall, like all these like certificates, like from school or something.
Yeah.
I didn't really bother to, ask him, what is this? So he says, let me show you something. So he began to show me old books from the 1700s to 1800s, and he started telling me how much they were worth.
Wow.
And I said, wow, and he had them in glass cases.
That's
and
awesome.
Yes, I noticed that his house was somewhat empty. I didn't ask a lot of questions, but he said, "I'm going to give you an old book I want you to read." So I'm thinking I'm about to come up. He's going to give me a book from the 1700s,
Yeah.
$20,000, So he gives me a book, and I said, "What's this?" And he said, "It's an old book. I want you to read it." And I said, "Well, how old is it?" And he says, "It goes back to day one."
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay." So when I looked at it, it was a 1611 King James.
Yeah.
And right away, I thought Catholicism, religion. And he said this, and I think this was the best way that we can approach people when we give them a Bible. He said, do not look at it as a religious book. He said, look at it as a history book. I understand now why he said that.
Yeah.
Because when I went through all 39 books of the Old Testament, I saw, Egypt,
Yeah.
Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome. And it felt like I knew this already.
Yeah.
And I brought it back, and he said, what did you read? And I said, oh, I read all 39 books. And he said, no, there's 27 more in the New Testament. And then I was like, oh, you want me to read that too? I thought you only wanted me to read it from day one, from the book of Genesis. And he said, no, take it back. I said, okay. I will say total, it took me about a month to read it. And I went through all 27 books of the New Testament, from Matthew to Revelation, from Genesis to Malachi. And I was very intrigued. So I brought it back to him. And this guy lights up a cigar, and he's drinking whiskey with a dark beer.
Yeah.
And I finally asked him about all of these plaques. and he said, well, they're mine. And I said, but they all say USC. And he had shared with me that he was a professor at USC. He was retiring and he was moving to Wisconsin to be with his family. That's why his house was half empty.
Wow.
He was getting rid of books. Because I remember the way he said it. And I said, well, why are you getting rid of your books? He said, because I'm like this going down in my career. He said, so I just want to get rid of things. And I said, okay. So I give him back the Bible. And he said, no, that one you keep. That's what he said. He said, that one you keep. He said, continue reading it. He gave me hints that I believe he was a believer.
Yeah.
I don't know if he ever really was. But he asked me, what was it about the Old Testament? He didn't ask me about no specific book, but that intrigued you. And I told him this. Well, I read about Moses, and to a certain extent, it kind of reminded me of me because he had anger issues.
Yeah.
And I said, but yet, he didn't get to enter into the promised land. God asked him to strike the rock once, and he did. Water came out of it. The second time, he asked him to strike the rock once, but he struck it twice, and he didn't get into the promised land. And he led the children of Israel for 40 years into the wilderness, which probably should have took them only from Egypt to Israel, maybe 12 to 14 days. But I read that God had brought them into the wilderness to see what was in their hearts. And those words, believe it or not, tenderized my heart.
Yeah.
And it began to break down all the anger and all the misery that I was in, David, because I didn't know why I was always angry.
Yeah.
I didn't know why I was always miserable. I'm going to confess this to you. One day I went to the bookstore and I bought a book, and it said, How to Get People to Like You.
Yeah.
And I tried reading it, and I couldn't even finish half of the book. It just did not interest me. Because many times when I would talk to people at a young age, hate, misery, depression would all come out of my mouth. And that was what was in my heart.
Yeah.
And I realized that because reading the scriptures, that out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So whatever is in here is going to come out here.
Oh, yeah.
I always tell people, just sit back, watch, learn, observe, because people will tell you who they are by this.
Oh, yeah.
So he asked me what else. He kept asking me about the Old Testament. At any time, Dave, you could interject. I don't want to take up all
your time. I'm listening.
Okay. Well, he asked me, what else intrigued you about the Old Testament? And then I said, one more story. I said about Samson. He said, what was it about Samson? He said, well, he was a Nazarite from his mother's womb. And for those of you that don't know what a Nazarite is, it's an oath that you take. And he was not supposed to cut his hair. He was not supposed to touch anything dead. And he was not supposed to have strong drink. So one thing about Samson, he was a judge. And he could have had a godly woman, but he chose women of the world.
Yeah.
And well, he fell. We all know the story, how he was deceived. He told this woman the truth about his strength or about his oath. She cut his hair. And there was one scripture that really, that night really tore me apart. Was when she said, get up, the Philistines are coming. And he said, I will get up and I will defeat them, etc., like I've always have.
Yeah.
And the next scripture said, and he didn't know that God had left him.
Yeah.
And I remember when I read that, I closed the Bible and I turned around the other way, and I turned off my light and I cried, because here's this guy living his life thinking that God is with him. How many people have are going on in life right now thinking that God is with them?
Wow.
And now somebody may say, well, the Bible says that God would never leave you nor forsake you. I get that. The Bible doesn't contradict itself. Believe me, I did my study. As a matter of fact, I challenged people in the past. If you could find me one contradiction, if you can prove it,
yeah,
I will give you $100 for every contradiction.
Yeah.
And so far, I still have all my money.
Yeah.
I said that, but we we can walk away from God.
Exactly.
He won't forsake us, but we can walk away from God. If you go to the book of Revelation, when he wrote those letters to the 7 churches, it says that you have forsaken your first love. And he's talking to the church.
Yeah.
So Samson forsook God, and God just, let him do his thing. And we all know the story. But another one that intrigued me, and I shared with them, was Joseph.
Oh man, that's a lot of people's favorites. That's so powerful,
I'm going to share something about that before I jump in when he asked me about the New Testament.
Yeah.
Let's look at the life of Joseph, and which can be found in the book of Genesis for those of you that are interested in looking it up. I began to read it, and it was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
That God had not only given this man dreams, but he shared them with the family, and the family, if you will, came against him.
They hated him.
Yeah, they hated him, and God was giving him revelation through dreams. I still believe that God can speak to people through dreams, through visions, and even sometimes through audible voice, or even through the scriptures. Yeah. That's just me. People don't have to believe exactly like the way I believe.
Yeah.
So he went to check on his brothers, sent by his father. His brothers pretty much wanted to kill him, but they ended up throwing him in a ditch. They took him out and they sold him to the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites took him to Egypt. Then they sold him to Potiphar. Potiphar saw his work, saw how he shined, saw how, if you will, everything he touched, if you will, turned to gold. Everything flourished with Joseph.
Yeah.
He was a blessed man. And I'm going to make this relevant. Potiphar's wife came on to Joseph, and Joseph rejected her. She cried out pretty much that he tried to rape her, or tried to, if you will, sexually intercourse or whatever.
Yeah.
Potiphar had no choice. So they arrested Joseph and they threw him in prison. He went to prison innocently. He meets the baker and he meets the wine bearer that they used to serve Pharaoh.
Yeah.
The cupbearer. Yeah. He interprets the dreams. One of them is restored back to his position. The other one pretty much dies. But before that, he beats Joseph because he told him he interpreted his dream, and it wasn't something he wanted to hear. So we know that eventually Pharaoh had 2 dreams, 7 years apiece.
Yeah.
Joseph interprets that. Then he sits at the right hand of Pharaoh, and I just kind of gave you the short version. But this is my point. Joseph was thrown into the ditch. He was sold. He was falsely accused. He did prison time. And all of that happened. And I really want you to think about this, David. All of that happened because the favor of God was upon him.
Yeah.
I mean, and eventually he met with his family. And again, I'm giving you the short version. And he brings them in. We know there was 7 years of plenty and harvest and 7 years of famine. And the entire nation of Egypt was blessed because of one man.
Yeah.
And I always tell people that if you're blessed, your entire company, your warehouse, your job could be blessed because you are there.
It's interesting because the other day we were out looking for something to eat, and the biggest lines were the 2 Christian-based companies, Chick-fil-A and In-N-Out. The lines are never short. You're never going to go and there's no one there. I have been to In-N-Outs from the San Francisco, Sacramento, all the way down to LA, and the lines are packed. And it's just interesting because I remember reading Fast Food Nation that kind of broke down about the whole fast food craze and burgers and everything. And it was talking a lot about In-N-Out being faith-based and the family and the verses. And it's exactly what you said, Hobby Lobby, they shut down on Sundays because their workers can go to church and a place of worship. you know, and we see that they're blessed also. So it's kind of a lot of similarities in what you're saying.
Yeah. And so after I shared that with him, he asked me what I thought about the New Testament.
Yeah.
And I went through Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, 1st, 2nd Corinthians, etc. And then he tells me, what was it about the Gospels that intrigued you? And then I just said, well, the things that Jesus said. Now, keep in mind, David, I was hesitant to share with him because growing up, this was instilled in me by my parents that only a holy man can read and interpret the scriptures.
Yeah.
So they were saying the reason why we never read it was because only a priest can read it. Only he is, if you will, good enough. Only he can interpret it. But it is not true.
That's a good way to keep people oppressed, though.
Yes. Yes. And so I never picked it up. So when I shared that with him as well, so he said, tell me. So I said, when Jesus said, love your enemies and pray for those that spitefully use you, I told him, I didn't get it. And he said, well, what was it that you didn't get? And I said, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I said, I can't do that. And then he tells me, you're right. He said, God has to give you that.
Yeah.
And he said, you can't hate someone that you're praying for. And he said, you should try it. And I remember that night, I prayed for people that I didn't care for. And it was very, very hard.
Yeah.
For me. And that was one of the first times that I believe I tried praying. And I will say this, that was the first time that I began to experience spiritual warfare as well.
I mean, you've called me over the months when things happen. You're like, man, I'm really hating this person, man. You need to help me and just help me, pray for me. You know, there's times where that has happened, you know, and so so that to me, I know that that's the truth in your life, that you know
Yeah.
to pray for your enemies.
Yeah. So after that, you know, I remember maybe about a week after that, he invited me back to his home and we had breakfast there. It was the first time I ate there. And I walked through the back of his house and he said, I want you to see me out. So we walked to the front of his house. Everything was gone.
Yeah.
And he turns around and he puts his hand out and he wants to shake it. And I said, okay. I said, you're leaving now? And he said, yeah. He goes, make sure you lock this door and you lock the back door when you go back home. And I said, okay, cool. There was nothing in there. And I said, why don't you give me your number? I said, and then I'll call you.
Yeah.
And he said this, no, we were only meant to meet for a little while.
Wow.
He shook my hand and it saddened me, you know, because I wanted to stay in touch with this guy.
Yeah.
You know, but so that's how I guess my education in the scriptures began. So now what I did, David, because even though everything in the scriptures touched me, like it was changing me.
Yeah.
I still had that. I'm going to prove, or I want to find out if this Bible is real.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, David, who would be the biggest suckers to believe in the scriptures if they only used the tools that they had? Lawyers. Lawyers are good at digging up for evidence.
Yeah.
If you ever want to find out if the scriptures are true, go dig it up and try to find out, because the more you dig, the more you're going to find out that it's true.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. We didn't have Google. We didn't have YouTube. You know, we didn't have social media in the 90s, you know, early 90s.
Yeah.
So I began to go to bookstores. And I'll be honest with you, David, I wanted to find out and prove that the Bible was not real.
Yeah.
Because I was fighting what I was feeling.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to believe. And the more and more I dug.
But I think for me, most people that want to disprove the Bible, it's because of their own heart conditions and their own issues.
Yes.
That because if this book is true, then we're in trouble. You know.
You know, it's funny because, you know, you talk to atheists, and I don't ever debate or argue with an atheist, because I found out that most atheists that I know of, most of them were once in the church and are just hurt.
Yeah.
I've talked to them, and believe it or not, I don't ever sit there and I debate with them. But I do ask questions, for an example, if there is no God, why do you call yourself an atheist? And many of them do not know how to answer that. If the Bible is fake, why are you so mad?
Yeah.
Why are you so mad at people that, read it? If it's fake, who cares, right?
Yeah.
So one day I told this one guy, and it was one of the first times that I prayed for someone. I said, do you mind if I pray for you? Because I don't believe in that. And I go, well, if there is no God, then these are just a bunch of goofy words. And he said, right. And I said, okay, then allow me to pray then.
Yeah.
And he said, okay. So I prayed for him. And, a lot of people believe in the Big Bang thing and over millions and millions and millions and millions and millions. Whenever they can explain something, they'll just add another zero. It's just another,
yeah.
millions and millions of years. There was an explosion, but they can't explain what that explosion was. To go a little bit further, they can't explain, for you to have an explosion, you have to have stuff.
Yeah.
Well, there was gases. Where did the gas come from? Well, I don't know. But then there was an explosion. That's all they know.
Yeah.
One thing about an atheist, he answers the majority of the questions like this. Probably, maybe, I don't know, could have.
Yeah.
Or we don't know.
Yeah.
Probably could have, maybe, I don't know. They never give you facts, And then when they want to talk about evolution, they'll bring up, a bird. Well, his beak changed. Well, that's adaptation. That's a whole different other subject.
Yeah.
Believe me, I know what I'm talking about because I studied it. What convinced me, David, that the Bible is true, and I think this is important for if you call yourself a Bible-believing Christian, you better know this, was the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
When they were found.
Mm-hmm.
They date back to the 1st century. And, some people say they were found by accident. No, they were not found by accident. If you can go to the Temple Institute in Jerusalem and see the entire scroll of the book of Isaiah that talks about the birth of the coming Messiah.
Yeah, and I want to see that someday.
Yeah. So if you understand Hebrew and you have your Bible, you can go read it word for word. And if you read Hebrew, you can read it and translate it word for word.
Yeah.
One thing that people always say, well, the Bible's been translated many times. No, it has not. Okay. It's been, if you will, broken down into the New American Translation, the New American Standard.
Yeah. That's a huge misconception that people think that the Bible's been changed, and the Dead Sea Scrolls threw that out. That threw that theory right out the window.
Right. So one day, after studying the Dead Sea Scrolls, I finally went back to the book of Revelation because I was told you'll never understand the book of Revelation if you don't understand the typology, if you will, of the Old Testament.
That's true.
And so anybody out there listening that wants to know the end, it's all there, but you're not going to understand it unless you go back to the beginning and read it. One thing about me, David, is this, that I've learned, and this is just me, everything that's in the book of Revelation, you could find it in the first 11 chapters of the book of Genesis. From the beginning, I believe that everything is going to come full circle.
Oh, yeah.
I used to believe, in linear, like here's where I was born, here's where I am present day, and here's where I'm going to die. We think linear.
Yeah.
With God, at least in my opinion, it's cyclical. For an example, everything is going to come back full circle. You read of a tree of the tree of life. In the book of Revelation, you read the tree of life. Mm-hmm. In the book of Babylon, you read a one world government. We read a one world military. We read Nimrod, a picture of the Antichrist. With the book of Revelation, we have a picture of the Antichrist. Cain has a mark. In the book of Revelation, there's people with marks in their forehead. It's all there, and it's all going to come full circle.
That's good.
I'm just going to prove it to people that are listening. Every time the disciples asked Jesus about the future, and these are things that intrigue me, which I didn't know we called it biblical prophecy. You know, he always referred to the beginning or what happened, in the past.
Yeah.
What is the end going to look like? Well, as it was in the days of Noah before the flood. That's what he said. well, what's it going to be like right before you return, as it was in the days of Lot?
Yeah.
And so I began to look, because that's what intrigued me. So went to the book of Revelation, and then I found, if you will, technology spoken of in the book of Revelation, when it talks about that there will be two witnesses witnessing on the streets of Jerusalem, and they will be killed by the Antichrist. And the Antichrist will let them lay on the streets for 3 days, and for the whole world to see.
Yeah.
So my thing is that either John, the Revelator, was a good guesser, or he saw the future.
Yeah.
Because think about this, David. It was May 14th, 1948, that Israel became a nation again.
Yeah.
That land was desolate for nearly almost 2,000 years. I want to say June 7th, I may have the date wrong, June 7th, 1967, Jerusalem is restored to Israel. Even though today, I believe it's Tel Aviv, that's the capital, but biblically speaking, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel.
Yeah.
So before May 14, 1948, people would have thought that that book of the witnesses laying on the streets could have never happened because Israel's gone. But now Israel's restored as a nation. It makes plain sense. They were talking about technology. How else would the entire world be able to see those people laying on the streets, but through satellite TV?
Exactly.
We have all the technology. I can keep going on and on, so I'm going to slow down so that you can speak.
No, man, that's all. I'm glad you're sharing this stuff, right? Because I think a lot of people are intrigued, and a lot of the stuff you're saying. I mean, I remember being intrigued. I don't know why. Like for you, Egypt. For me, it was Rome. I've always been intrigued with Rome, even before I was a Christian. Even when I would even in high school, there was something about Rome and the way that it worked. And I'm a huge Star Wars fan, first of all.
Yes.
And Star Wars, the whole empire is kind of shadowed after Rome, the Roman Empire. So I've always found that very intriguing and interesting. But another thing is that this is what I want to ask you, and I don't know how to word it, because I know that you believe, but you're not what most say an active Christian, church-going Christian. You're not that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, because I don't want to say something wrong. So what I'm interested in then is, I guess, man, I don't want to say you're in the outside looking in, but as far as the church, the modern day church, you're on the outside of that, right?
Right.
I'm interested in knowing, what are we doing wrong? What are we doing wrong in reaching people? Because I think we've had some conversations, and you've had some things that you have expressed to me, and maybe some people need to hear this.
I'll tell you what I see. There was a guy years ago that came to my house, and I'll start here. And he asked me, "Do you go to church?" And I lied because I wanted to get rid of the guy.
Yeah.
That, I just go to this Catholic church down the street.
Yeah.
Knowing, that I don't go there, So he said, "Well, we're building a church, and we want to know, what would you like to see in our church for you to come to it?" Now, in my mind,
Yeah,
I thought that was a red flag, and I'll tell you why. Everyone in the scriptures that came to Jesus,
yeah,
left different. Everyone. I believe it is impossible to have truly meet Jesus and leave the same.
yeah.
Here was a guy that I believe was conforming his church to meet the world's needs.
I know where he got that from. That's Rick Warren's book, Creating a Seeker-Friendly Church, something like that. That's where that's from. Anyways, what were we saying?
Yeah, so that's pretty much what he was doing. And I just said, well, whatever you do, I said, you know what? I don't want to go to your church. I just told him. And I began to speak Bible with him, and then come to find out he really didn't know much.
Yeah.
He was a seeker-friendly person that wanted to pat people in the back and tell them that they were great, they were awesome, they were amazing.
And have a full building, right?
Yeah, have a full building, collect tithes and offerings, and
Yeah.
get rich, and have a bunch of goats acting like sheep.
That's good.
And that's really so that turned me off. And then I began to visit friends' church that would, man, you know so much, Tone. You need to come. How do you know so much? Who taught you? Just read.
Yeah.
Just read. David, let me say this for possibly all believers that are listening.
Yeah.
This is just me. I truly believe that the day that you surrender your life and repent to Christ, that first year will determine how you would live the rest of your life. Meaning, if you don't read, if you don't feed yourself, if you're not active, not only in praying and worshiping and going to church, you are going to be in and out for the rest of your life.
In other words, like the growth is stunted from the very beginning.
From the very, very beginning. And me, all I did was read. I later on found out that, because people would ask me, what commentaries do you read? Look, man, the best commentary for the Bible is the Bible.
Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit is the interpreter of the scriptures. The Apostle Paul and Peter and those guys didn't have commentaries.
They're the Holy Spirit.
They had the Holy Spirit, and that was it, to lead and guide them. Now, to go back to what you said about what is the church doing wrong, one thing in the book of Revelation, when Jesus spoke to John and said, write these 7 letters, he first told them what they were doing right, and then he told them what they were doing wrong. Okay. One thing that I believe that the state of the church is today, it is very, very seeker friendly.
Yeah.
They would rather have people feel happy than holy.
Mm.
And most people today tell me, you need to come to my church. And this is what they say.
Yeah.
My pastor's cool and he's funny.
Yeah. I hear that a lot.
It's like, what? Like, me personally, I want to learn.
Yeah.
I went to go visit a friend's church, and the name of the sermon, believe it or not, was Life is Like a Chocolate Cake.
That was the title of the sermon.
That was the title of the sermon. And he just had this big old smile. He had skinny jeans on. He was wearing chanclas, an open shirt with little hairs hanging out.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was trying to look sexy for.
Yeah.
He had a packed church. And I remember that people were going up to him after the service and telling him, "You rock, Pastor, you rock."
And they have this weird Hollywood smile, huh?
Yes. Yes. And, I don't know. Then I hear words like, have you made, and this is just me, and people can use it if they want to, but this is just me because I'm a very direct person. And I'm the kind of person that I'd rather just be told, do not beat around the bush with me.
Yeah.
He started telling people, have you made a decision for Christ? That's what he said. And he said, go ahead and bow your head. And anybody who wants to give, who wants to let Jesus in the driver's seat, lift up your hand.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, repeat this prayer after me. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I've never read a sinner's prayer in the Bible. Okay.
Yeah, there isn't. Yeah.
I've never read where Jesus told someone, let me into your heart. I know those are nice words and we use them sometimes.
Yeah.
Biblically speaking,
yeah,
Jesus never said, let me into your heart. And he never said, make a decision for me. The words that were used all through the Old Testament, then John the Baptist and even Jesus and Paul, Peter, was repent.
Yeah.
I think these pastors today take the sting out of it. They take the conviction out of it and they just say, make a decision.
Well, there's churches that don't like the word repent.
Yeah, they don't. And they take out hell. They'll use a word like a world without God. No, it's hell.
Yeah.
I get it. Jesus talked more about hell than he did heaven.
So the church, in your point of view, has been watered down. It's been diluted.
Yes. And believe me, because my daughter just got married Sunday.
Congratulations to your family.
Thank you. And I met several pastors over there because she's very active in the church.
Yeah.
So was her husband. He leads the worship, and he always talks to me whenever, it's funny because he tells me, I don't go to my pastor, I come to you. And I'm like, well, I'm not a pastor.
Yeah.
I said, but I'll just show you. And we had dinner yesterday, and he kept telling me, and I'm gonna be honest with you, David, and this is where I can get into trouble.
Yeah.
Because I believe that to whom much is given, much is required.
Yes, sir.
And for everything that has been revealed to me, I'm going to be held accountable. And I know that. Okay. So he told me this yesterday. I've never met anyone that knows as much as you. And he said, how does that make you feel? And I said, like I'm in trouble. I said, believe me, that's not a pat on the back for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, but he goes, yeah, I don't even go to my pastor. His father is a pastor as well.
Wow.
And he says, and I always tell my dad about you. I always talk to my dad about you. And he likes talking about prophecy because I believe that that's like my cup of tea. I could talk prophecy with the best of them. And I don't say that braggingly. I say that humbly because I believe God has revealed things to me. Of course, I don't have no date. People go around setting dates when the Lord's going to return and stuff. I don't have a date, But, and let me tell you something. If there was a date, here's what people would do. They'll repent the day before.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But they don't know if it's Pacific Standard Time or Eastern.
Which is probably why there is no date in the Bible. So real quick, man, what's interesting is the fact that both of us came to the understanding of God way different, but almost the same conclusion. Because when I got saved, I was incarcerated, as you know. I was in solitary confinement. I didn't have any chaplain, no nothing. I had a King James Bible, art thous and these and all that. And if it wasn't for my prayers of God in helping me to understand this thing, I grew up in a Christian home. I did grow up in a Christian home, but I didn't want nothing to do with the Lord. I mean, I believed in the Lord. I never doubted the Lord. I just didn't want to follow the Lord. But even the way my parents grew up, there was a lot of things that I didn't see in the Bible. They have to wear dresses. They can't wear makeup. They can't wear jewelry. The men have to wear suits, like all this, so I started reading the scriptures and I started challenging my parents a little. I'm like, it doesn't say this in the Bible, And one of the, out of the 6 years I served, one of them was in solitary confinement. And that's when I really dove into the Bible. I had no opportunity to share with anybody else. So it was just me. It was God sharing with me. And I learned so much that I have grown to appreciate the time I did in solitary. I'll tell you why, man, because I was serving God in prison. And I kept telling the brothers, I can't wait to get out. I can't wait to join the church. I can't wait to be a part of this, this movement of God. And I didn't realize the circus that was going on out here, and we would be like, man, we're living out of a locker on a bunk. And I'm just like, man, we're so blessed today. We're blessed, man. And we learned how to live out of those blessings. Blessings wasn't, it's easy to be sitting in the church. You're dressed in your Sunday best. You have a nice air conditioned car waiting for you outside. You have your wife and your children next to you. You have a home that you're going to go to with a full refrigerator. It's easy to say I'm blessed, but to be living in a bunk, incarceration, knowing you're away from your loved ones, but because of the blessings are way beyond material. It's the blessings of your heart. It's the blessings of those things. So my Christianity is way different than the average person, because when I got out, I was very let down. I'm just like, man, I just want to go back.
Yeah.
This is a bunch of foolery out here, I could have easily have been like, you know what, forget this. But here's the thing. I believed in God so much that I said, Lord, you're calling me now. I said, Lord, now I understand why you're calling me to pastor a church, because you are raising up leaders that aren't gonna be doing the circus show. People, men and women of God that truly want to serve him without a hidden agenda, without their own agenda. I almost feel like God allowed me to get the fame I had in the world so I wouldn't feel the enticement now as a pastor, because it's like, man, been there, done that. let's keep it moving, you know.
Right.
And anyways, I just wanted to share that with you, that I don't know what, when I told you I was a Christian before we had ever even become friends, I don't know what you expected, you know.
I didn't know. I knew you were a pastor. I didn't know what kind of pastor you were. I didn't know. I could have guessed, but I didn't know if you were one of those seeker-friendly
Yeah.
pastors or you were a pastor that was, biblically sound. You know, but the more and more I began to hear you, I knew you knew what you were talking about, and I respected that. And I told you this over the phone. I don't see you like Sir Dyno. I see you as a man of God.
Thank you.
That's the way I see you. And today, pastors are not looked at as men of God. They're looked at as, my pastor's cool, my pastor's funny.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to say, and I'm going to say it slowly so that people can understand this. We know that the word pastor comes from the word shepherd. It means the same thing. Many pastors don't smell like sheep anymore. Many pastors don't smell like sheep anymore. Meaning, many of these pastors act like they're celebrities because many of them have a mega church.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I'm against mega churches, but I could never be a member of a mega church. There's no accountability there.
Yeah.
Okay. I've gone to churches where they sat 2,500, some even 10,000 at one time. The pastor goes up there and performs his 30-minute sermon, collects tithes and offering, and disappears. Doesn't fellowship with anyone. David, I began to study biblical numerology. I'm not talking about worldly demonic numerology, but biblical numerology. There was a reason why Jesus said a man had 100 sheep and one went astray. There was a reason why he gave that number.
Yeah.
And this shepherd, if you will, 100 sheep. One went away, he left the 99, and when he got the other one and brought him back, we all know the story. But he had fellowship, and he knew all of these sheep. That one just didn't get lost in the crowd. Okay, Jesus fed over 5,000 people at one time, not including women and children, and another time over 3,000, not including women and children.
Yeah.
He ministered for 3.5 years. And then he told them to wait in Jerusalem, tarry till you receive power from on high. Only 120 people showed up. Okay, so there's a lot of pastors today that are probably discouraged. Why can't I pack in my church? Maybe God only wants you to have 100 so that you can fellowship them and disciple them. Because we're not supposed to make them converts. We're supposed to disciple them, if I'm correct.
Yes.
And many people are not being discipled, especially in these mega churches. So for me, I could never be a member of a mega nightclub because that's what they look like today.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to say something, and for me, coming from the world, somebody invited me to a Christian church. I want to say, man, it was like early 2000s. I was at least 20 years ago. And I was really, really beat up from the world. And my buddy calls me and he says, "Hey, man, why don't you come with me to church?" I don't want to go to church, man. No, you should come with me. I hardly ever go, but my church is cool. I said, all right. Keep in mind, I'm DJing, I'm traveling, I'm in the studio, I'm around dudes getting high, smoking crack, whatever, partying, the whole nightclub atmosphere. I've been going to strip clubs. And I'm just tired of the world. So I needed, if you will, a refuge, somewhere to escape to.
Get grounded.
So I thought church would be a good deal. I walk in there, they had just renovated the church. And I'm not going to lie to you. When the worship team started, I guess, the worship, they began to sing a song called Celebration by Kool and the Gang. They had literally lights spinning, laser shows. And I remember people were clapping, jumping up and down, looking around like it was a rock concert.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not going to lie to you. There were women in front of me that were moving their bodies, wearing short dresses like they were in a club. So I waited a couple of minutes and then I told my friend, how is this different from the nightclub that I go to?
Wow.
and he didn't know how to answer me.
Yeah.
So I just said, look, I'm not going to hold this against you, but I'm going to leave. I was there maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I just said, I'm going to go ahead and take off. So
and you were already doing concerts and stuff?
What's that?
Were you already doing concerts and everything?
Oh, yeah. This was early 2000s. I was doing shows all throughout the 90s.
Oh, yeah. So you're just like, what? Is this another concert?
Yeah. So I started realizing that the church had compromised and started becoming seeker-friendly to get the world to come in. They wanted the world to come in and feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, David. When the world comes in, and if you're preaching Bible, I'm not saying, fire and brimstone.
Yeah.
But if you're preaching Bible, there's going to be conviction there.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie to you, David. There's been times that I've avoided it and I didn't want to go because I knew I would get convicted. But you know what? Conviction is good.
Yeah.
Conviction is good. Conviction would always bring you back to the cross. It's when you don't feel conviction, it's when I feel you're in trouble.
So a question rises in my head right now. Is that, and maybe you have an answer for this or maybe you don't. There seems to be a gap because, I mean, those that watch your show, it's far from a Christian show.
Right.
I love the fact that I don't believe, maybe it's a little respect toward me, but I think it's more respect toward God that, your language anytime I go to your show, you don't cuss or you don't, things like that. I've seen you, sometimes you take shots with some of the artists that come, and what's that gap? I mean, what is that gap? Because I hear a man that believes, I hear a man that actually you have a reverence for God more than most Christians, so what is that gap? If you don't mind me asking.
Well, first of all, I don't consider myself a Christian, and I never will. If somebody were to ask me, then what do you consider yourself? I will consider myself a believer in what? In the scriptures. I do believe that the Bible is true.
Now, you say that because the word Christian has been watered down? Is that why you say that?
Yeah, people think of Joel Osteen when they say Christian, or Warren and those guys. Yeah. To me, I see right through those guys. I came from the street. I know a hustler when I see one.
Yeah.
I know people may not like it, me speaking like that, but I tell you what, David, that if God were ever to be, I want to say the word crazy enough to call me, I'd probably be the most hated man alive, as it is, because I won't hold back and I will tell the truth.
Well, that's the thing, is I do believe God has called you.
Okay, well, I want to receive that phone call. So, but here's my thing. Here's my thing, David. I can't put my finger on it. Why I can't. I do want to say this to people, because just recently, some idiot claims he knows me, made a video on YouTube that I was a pastor for 15 years, or I don't even know where in the heck he got this from.
Yeah.
Supposedly I'm exposing Tony, and supposedly this person is a Christian. I don't know who this guy is, but he used to teach Bible study. He did this. I don't know what he's talking about. My thing is this: if you really truly know me and care about me, then come knock on my door, or I'll tell you what, don't talk about me. Mm-hmm. Pray for me. Don't talk about me, pray for me. But yet you want to claim you're exposing me, expose the devil, expose the false church. Who am I? Yeah. But David, since I started this podcast, not only have I been falsely accused of things, but I've been pretty much damned and condemned by several people. I've experienced a lot of hate. Now, that's fine, because I have thick skin. To me, I just shrug it off my shoulders. They can say whatever they want. But I truly do believe that if God ever called me, I would probably be the most hated man alive, simply because I will speak the truth, and that's something that the world will not be able to comprehend. True, sound, biblical teachings. Yeah. I will never try to convert anybody. I will never judge anybody. That's up to God. My thing is this. I think pastors just ought to preach and let God do the changing. But as far as your question, David, I can't put my finger on it. I know a lot of people say, well, why not? Why haven't you taken that step?
Yeah.
Maybe because I know that if I do, there's no turning back. Yeah. And I'm going to say this for the people that are listening. I want to say it's Matthew 7:13, verses 13, 14. It talks about there's a narrow road and there's a wide road. And the narrow road leads to life. And there are few that find it.
Yeah.
And he said, and there's a broad and a wide road that leads to destruction. And many find it. I will have to say, David, that right now, knowing what I know now, I am still on that wide road. Do I say that with conviction? Absolutely. I just need, a made up mind, and I need people to pray for me and not talk about me.
I think that I think us becoming friends is a huge part of it. I believe it's God's plan. A lot of the things you say, a lot of the things, the way you believe, how you believe, I'm the same exact way. I caught a little bit of flack of going to that fight or being involved with it, because they're like, what are you doing with these non-believers? What are you doing? I'm like, first of all, I'm there to be an influencer. I know myself. See, there's a difference when somebody says, oh, I can hang around with sinners because Jesus did, but then they end up doing what the sinners are doing. There's another thing of saying, I know the light that's inside of me, and I know there's darkness over there, and if I don't go there, there's going to be no light there. And for that specific reason, that's why I went, to be an influencer. You know what I mean? Like, you were there at the fight. Did I act any different?
No, of course not.
You know what I mean?
I think it's silly that people say that. I think pastors ought to get out more. Some people are just stuck behind those four walls at the church and never communicate. They never, if you interact with the world, how else are you going to be a light?
Yeah.
How else? Those people may never, ever go to your church or to a church, but, they'll see you. They may never, ever read the Bible, but they'll see you. So for those people that are talking like that, that's silly. Yeah. It wasn't like you were hanging out and drinking beers with those guys or smoking with those guys, and then all of a sudden you go back to being a super Christian. No.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. Going on your show, going down and being on the show where you have a bunch of guys the week before taking shots and this and that. I'm like, this is exactly what we're called to do. I enjoy pastoring a church. I enjoy discipling people in the church. But I gotta get my hands dirty. I gotta go out. I want to go and proclaim Jesus where there's people that aren't following Jesus. And I saw your show as a perfect platform for that.
Yeah, David, like I said, I wish I could answer that question, but I can't.
Yeah.
But I just encourage everyone to whoever is going around talking about me, just honestly, knock on my door, talk to me. Me and you, David, come from the era that if we had an issue with someone, we would take it up with them.
Yeah.
We wouldn't go on social media and start calling people out on their fake accounts.
Yeah.
Or make videos of people exposing them. It's silly. It's like, take it out with me. You have something to say. I'm not that hard to find. You can reach out to me, talk to me, pray for me, whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, David, with that being said, I really got to get going now because I have something to attend to today. But I truly, truly appreciate you talking to me, allowing me to speak on the things that I believe in.
Yeah.
And the things that, we could have an intelligent conversation talking about things that we believe, things that are true.
Yeah.
But believe me, David, I truly believe that if God would ever to call me to do something, I would be sold out, because you have to be. You can't half do anything.
Yeah.
So, we'll see what happens, I guess, from here.
Yeah. And I appreciate your time. I do believe God has called you. I do believe that already. I'm already excited about it. I think that everything you've done from High C to all the records, to all the production, to this podcast is nothing compared to what God has in store for you. I'm not just saying that. I said that to you in your dining room, and I don't know how that makes you feel. And a part of me doesn't want to ever make you feel uncomfortable, but I feel like I have to say it. I feel like I'm compelled to say it. So I know it's from God, because I'm not like that. I'm not going to be in somebody's dining room saying, man, God has called you. What are you waiting for? But I have said that to you, and I do believe that. And what I ask all the viewers that are believers is for them to continue just to pray for you.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've had people that I've sat down with, ate with, invited them to my home, and they asked me some of these questions, and I shared with them. Then they leave and tell people that I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah.
Like weren't you just at my house eating? And then I shared things with you that you wanted to know.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't understand people like that, David. I've never been that kind of person to talk behind somebody's back. I would just rather say it to that person's face.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in a confrontational way, but like if I have an issue with someone, I would bring it up. And I just wish people would do that. And if you got an issue with someone, you know what? Take it up with them or pray for them.
Yeah. And that's exactly why I brought up, because if I didn't bring up the fact of, let's say, the language and drinking on the podcast, then people would be like, oh man, why do you got this guy talking Bible? I'm like, what are you talking about? There's two grown men that are talking, and we're just going to be real about it. That's why I brought that up, just to kind of squash that. You know what I mean?
No, and I think it's important. I think it's important for you to be direct with me and ask me, because with me, there is no beating around the bush.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem, not necessarily bragging about it, but admitting, what you ask. I have no problem with it. Do I drink? Yes. Do I take shots? Yes. Do I, interact with my guests? And sometimes we say bad words. I'm not going to lie to you, David. Yes. So I don't have a problem admitting that. I shamefully admit that, but that's just me.
Yeah. But it's like, I mean, it is what it is, man. And I love the fact of everything that you shared. You shared your heart. I pray blessings, not only for you, but for your whole family. Congratulations again to your daughter being married.
Thank you.
I pray just nothing but good things for that couple, for God to open doors that need to be open, and for doors to close that need to be closed, and I hope this isn't our only conversation ever on something like on a platform like this. I appreciate you taking the time usually you're the one talking to somebody else. And
right.
So I really appreciate the fact that you did this. I know you got to get going, brother.
Awesome. All right, David, thank you very much. And tell your wife I said hello, and thank you guys once again. And this won't be the last time.
All right, let me end this recording.